What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow. So today we are going to be talking about Survivor South Africa Season 9, Return of the Outcasts, Week 2. So going through all and breaking down episodes 5 through 8. So this week we were eating good in reality television world. We had Blindside Butterbeans in Big Brother, Blindsides on the challenge, and a week full of Blindsides here in Survivor SA. So my name is Rachel.
I'm Alyssa, and just like we did last week, Rachel watched the episodes as they aired, and then I watched them binging all at once. So Rachel kind of has a better idea of like what happened in each individual episode, and then I was looking more at the story arcs that were happening across the 4 episodes that make up this week 2 of Survivor SA.
Man, Monday feels like so long ago. I'm like, what happened in episode 5? Really? So I had to like look at my notes before we started to remember everything that I wrote down. So, episode 5, Monday's episode, we start with this immunity challenge. They have to race in shallow water in order to reach a rope. You win a point, and then the tribe that gets to 5 points wins immunity. And they also win a braai, which is a South African grilled cheese sandwich.
I have heard so much about braais from like Survivor South Africa, and then like I feel like just in general, like South African cuisine seems like it's a bop. So maybe that can be something that we try sometime. Instead of going back to Applebee's, we can try a braai.
Yeah, the food in these episodes for these challenges looked really, really good. And so, for this kind of like running sort of physical challenge, you might wrestle in the middle. I feel like the strategy in this kind of challenge is to just run straight through the course and to try to reach the rope at the end, because it seemed like the players who tried to wrestle or block the person running from the other side, they oftentimes like fell or they got pushed and they were sort of disoriented. And it takes more time to like reorient yourself and stand up and then turn around to get to your rope that you have to grab, because like when you're on the ground that just takes so much extra time versus if you just try to run faster than the other person. It seems like that would be the better strategy.
Especially if you get hit hard and you go down hard, like that can be really disorienting. And then by the time you get back up, the other person's taken off in the opposite direction. So I
Especially
thought
the
it,
course, yeah, the course is so short. If you lose like 2 feet and you get pushed back 2 feet, like you're already too far away from your rope.
yeah. And so I thought it was interesting because the Red Tribe was saying that they don't do as well when it's kind of these 1v1 challenges, and they do better when it's like the team challenges that they have to win. And I feel like that's definitely true just because the Red Tribe, I feel like, doesn't have as many super strong people, and they have more of the, I don't want to say weak people because I don't think that they're weak, but I think they have people who are more oriented towards other aspects of the game.
I can see that with these 1v1 matchups, if you're looking at like the men versus the men, women versus the women for each team, like we sort of saw it play out for this immunity challenge, the blue team, the post-merge tribe dominates. Literally, the pre-merge tribe did not win a single point here. So I think if you're looking at those 1v1 matchups, I guess, they're quote weaker, but as a team, they have maybe better teamwork. So for those more team challenges, then they can win those.
Yeah. I felt really bad because it was a really bad blowout for the Red Tribe. They lost pretty handily.
So we go to see both of these camps after this challenge, and then we also see Steffi and Tevin for the post-merge tribe and pre-merge tribe find hidden immunity idols. And so these idols were hidden under the tribe flags for both camps. So same area, they're not hidden differently or anything weird like that. And these are regular idols, no beware advantages, no idols with expiry dates and like 2 tribals, but these are valid until final 6. So I thought that was really good for Steffi and Tevin.
Yes, it's really good, I think, for Steffi, especially because I guess, spoiler, Tevin goes home with his idol in his pocket. So it doesn't really matter if you find an idol if you don't know when and how to use it. So it seems like Steffi is in a better place game wise to use the idol well, just because she has a really strong alliance around her with the girls' alliance that she's in with Marion and Meryl. And so I feel like it might be easier for her to use her idol correctly than it was for poor Tiffany.
Yeah, and for Steffi, she tells Marion about the idol in episode 6. So those two know about each other's advantages with the diplomatic immunity and now Steffi's idol. And I thought it was just sort of funny, foreshadowing, sort of sad. Tevin has a confessional saying, "Oh, last time I left the game because of overconfidence and complacency, not going to let this idol go to my head." And I was like, dang, whenever you say anything too out there like that, they're always going to put it in on your boot episode to make you look foolish.
Yeah, it's kind of like oddly specific stuff where they foreshadow their own downfall.
So, another big theme that we're seeing in episode 5, and honestly, through this week 2 of episode, is Pinty rubbing people the wrong way on her tribe, as well as Killarney potentially being a target. In episode 5, people want to target Killarney because they're saying she was bad at challenges. She did supposedly, really, really poor in this immunity challenge. From what we saw, she was just sort of really disoriented. I don't think being super disoriented in a challenge warrants you to be voted out, but people are saying she's bad at challenges. And then for Pinty, they don't want to live with her anymore. So those two people are seemingly on the chopping block.
Yeah, and I feel like the thing about targeting Killarney specifically is that like no one on their team won a point in this immunity challenge. So it's kind of like it seems like very few people have a leg to stand on when it comes to challenge behavior because it's like y'all also lost. Like it's not like Killarney was the one who lost like the point that would have won them the game or something. Like by the time it was her turn, it was already over for them. So I feel like Pinty annoying people is interesting because we got a scene of her being annoying in pretty much every episode of week 2, and like she kept coming up as people's like backup name. Like I think she was the backup name for this episode. She was the backup name in at least one other episode. I think it might have been episode 8 when they were voting out Shona. Maybe no, the next episode then. The problem with binging them is that I cannot distinguish the episodes from one another. But yeah, she was the backup name. And so it's kind of like she's annoying people, but right now people would rather vote out someone who they see as strategically dangerous rather than someone who just pisses them off.
And I feel like we've seen that theme of Pinty rubbing people the wrong way in week 1 too, when we saw it was Pinty versus Tanya for those first 4 episodes. So it is interesting. I do wonder, like you were saying, people they might be annoyed by her, but they don't want to vote her out because there's bigger fish to fry. If Pinty can keep this going, can make it to the merge, and then potentially I don't know, people want to bring her to the end of the game because they can see that she's not going to win the game. She's making people annoyed, so maybe that isn't good jury management. I could definitely see people wanting to keep Pinty around come merge because they're like, hey, that's someone that I can probably beat at Final Tribal Council because of Pinty's social game and her camp actions.
I did think it was interesting. Someone talking about Pinty is how we got the title of the first episode of week 2. So episode 5, I guess, in total, which is rope dealer, because people were basically saying like, you can go talk to Pinty about her behavior. You can go like hang yourself with this rope. So it seems like Pinty is a very emotional player and probably would not take kindly to knowing she was on chopping block. So if you like come right out and tell her you're being annoying, that definitely seems like a good way to hang yourself in this game.
Oh my god, that phrase is so morbid. That's terrible.
Yeah, it's a phrase that I feel like has become less common in recent years, but it came up in episode 5. So
Another interesting phrase, Seamus in a confessional, he said stuff about it was so weird. He was like, boobs without nipples are pointless.
yeah, I heard that one and I was like, that's kind of funny, but also kind of like maybe you shouldn't be saying that.
I'm like, okay, is he trying to make it like an innuendo or is it like for like, milk? I was like, what is he trying to say?
You never quite know.
Oh my god. I was just so I was so taken aback. I was like, "What the heck? Where is this coming from?" That is just who thinks of that and who says that out loud? Like, that's just so weird.
Yes. I will say this episode was kind of like a breakout episode for Teresa after last week when we saw her kind of put her foot in her mouth by saying someone had an idol who definitely did not have an idol. This week she showed some strategic acumen because she was the one who wanted Tevin out, but she also knew that scrambling to try and get Tevin out might not work out the best. So she waited for someone else to have the same idea to put the plan into action. So ethically, I feel like week 2 was a very good week for Teresa, and it kind of started with this episode with her accurate reading of who she wanted out, but also like the social necessity of how to get them out correctly.
Yeah, so Teresa, like you said, wants to vote Tevin out. Phil also notices, hey, Tevin is untrustworthy. So we're seeing multiple people start to notice, hey, Seamus and Tevin are two alpha dudes. They are probably working together. We need to split them up. And Pinty his ear, she's also angry that Seamus didn't play the idol for her last episode, and she wanted Seamus to play the idol for her and not for himself, which I was like, you can't fault Seamus for that. Like, that's just such a weird thing to be like, I want to vote Seamus out because he didn't play the idol for me when it was expiring, and Pinty wasn't even the one getting the most votes in episode 4. Dino, we see say that he's not sure that he wants to take the shot because Tevin and Seamus are shields. So he's a little bit apprehensive at first. Then we see Phil, Felix, and Dino. They're all talking, and then they agree, let's vote Tevin out. Tevin has more relationships over Seamus. Tevin's more dangerous. They might not have this chance again to vote Tevin out before a swap or before the merge. Felix agrees. And I thought this was really interesting when these three guys come together, they create this no BS alliance. And then they're basically weighing, hey, we're between a rock and a hard place because if we rock the boat before a swap, a ton of people could be pissed off at us. Then we would get voted out because people might flip on us. Versus if you don't vote him out now, you might not get the chance to vote him out. So I thought it was really interesting how they're planning for a potential swap and trying to keep a lot of relationships so people aren't pissed off at them come a swap. And that's something that we miss out in on US Survivor now. So I thought it was so cool to see them planning for a potential swap coming up.
Yeah, and I think the it was nice to see that they were starting to think of a swap starting in this episode, because I feel like the story of the swap was another kind of overarching theme for this week, because they start talking about the swap in episode 5. The swap actually happens in episode 7, and then we kind of see the aftermath of the swap with who gets voted out in episode 8. So it's kind of cool to see how I think they did really well in keeping these storylines week to week. Though I will say that one thing about having these kind of like week-long arcs where stuff that starts on Monday is like resolved by Thursday is that I feel like the characters who they start to focus on can change very much from week to week. Like I feel like last week we got a lot more of like Steffi, Meryl, Marianne, or Marion. I keep saying Marianne because we were talking so much about Marianne for Survivor US, but and Marianne. But then this week it's kind of shifted to be more like Phil, Teresa, Pinty, though I guess Pinty was also there last week, and kind of the camera kind of shifts focus. But I feel like we didn't see Phil at all last week that I can remember. Killarney started getting screen time in episode 5, and I was like, oh, does this mean she's going home? Because we didn't see her hardly at all last week also. So
Yeah, I think it's interesting to look at like the storylines that are being built. And I would have to commend the cast. Like, they are willing to make these big moves, even if they're like, oh, maybe this isn't the right time. Oh, maybe we should keep Tevin and Seamus around as a shield because they are in the forefront. They're playing really hard, really fast. It could be a good shield. So it's really cool to see, okay, people are willing to make that move, because I feel like a lot of times we see people playing scared and they're not willing to make a move, not willing to take out the big dog in front, and then that person obviously gets to the end or pagonging happens. And it's sort of boring for us to watch on TV, but it is interesting to see them weigh the pros and cons here of, okay, let's vote out Tevin or let's vote out Pinty or Killarney here. And so Pinty, we see later on, she approaches Phil thinking that she wants to vote out Tevin too. And she basically lists the same 5 people that the No BS Alliance were thinking to get to vote Tevin out. And Phil, like you said, breakout week for him. He's starting to get a lot of evil confessionals, which are really fun to watch. Basically, like sort of being a little bit snarky and mean in these confessionals, but all in fun light. So I've been liking Phil's confessionals here.
Yeah, I feel like Phil is a really interesting character. And to your point about like people being willing to make like bold, big moves, I think it is worth noting that the Red Tribe, the Yontao tribe, was made up of people who never made the merge. And so I feel like that might affect kind of their like style of gameplay, because they may have seen like how playing scared like affected them the first time around, and maybe they wish they hadn't done that. And so I feel like when you kind of, there's less of a stigma of being a pre-merge player who goes pre-merge again than being a post-merge player who then goes out pre-merge the second time you play. Like, it's kind of like the pre-merge people are probably going to improve upon their placement the second time they play the game. And so they can play a little more risky, a little more balls to the walls, so to speak, because they don't have as much of like a legacy to live up to, I guess. And so I wonder like if that kind of affects how they're playing.
That's interesting. I feel like for me, seeing like pre-merge people go home, pre-merge again, I think that's probably worse than if you are post-merge like Chappie's and then you go home first, because Chappie's, because of his legacy from his original season, probably going to get invited back again. Someone who goes pre-merge might not get that opportunity to come back a third time, even if like, oh, you're voted out because you're a Tevin, you're playing really hard, you're really strategic. But you can also say on the other hand of that, like, you were voted out early 2 times, so something is sort of wrong with your game that you weren't able to minimize your threat level. And I think that's something that Dino is sort of doing really well. And we see that on the swap tribe later on, but he's able to sort of play very meek and get people on his side by pretending to be weak, which I want to know how he does that, because he's getting people to eat out of his hands on that swap tribe.
Yeah, my prediction is next week will be more Dino, which I think would be fun. So
Yeah, so with the No BS Alliance, they don't even need to convince Pinty to want to vote Tevin, because Pinty has that plan all on her own. So easy peasy there. No need to convince people because she thinks it's her own idea, anyways. So then we start to go to Tribal Council. Seamus hides a hidden immunity idol at Tribal Council, one that he made as well. And I was like, dang, this is so cool. We've seen this last week now with Shona hiding a fake idol, and then we see it this week with Seamus hiding a fake idol. Surprised it hasn't happened before in any other Survivor iteration, but it's done twice in one season now, separately from each other. Like, they didn't communicate, they didn't know about each other's idols. So I thought that was just so cool, but also so sad that both of them are voted out this week without ever using their fake idol.
maybe it's like the fake idol is the new Survivor curse. You make a fake idol and hide it at Tribal, and that guarantees you're going to get voted out soon.
Yeah, maybe. I wanted to see someone play it. Dino knows about Shona's fake idol, so maybe he can use it in the future for strategy. Seamus was saying in exit interviews that he hid it in a very like visible spot on the walkway to go vote. So maybe someone random will just look at it and find it, kind of like Adam Klein looking around the voting booth. Maybe someone will be walking up and spot it and be like, "Hey, what the heck is that?" and then grab it and then play this fake idol. So maybe we'll see these fake idols being played even after Seamus and Shona have been voted out.
That would be fun. I feel like if I were Seamus and Shona, I would get like some sort of joy from knowing that my fake idol like failed to save someone else after I was voted out. So
It would be sort of funny sad if someone really thought, oh, this Seamus fake idol is a real idol, and they like save it there, sort of like Adam Klein thought the podium idol was an idol, so he didn't go and get it until he was thinking he was going to get voted out. Someone similarly doesn't go and get the Seamus idol until they're going to be voted out, and then Nico is like, no, this is fake. And then it would be such good TV, but sort of sad for the person playing it.
yeah, but I feel like at least one of them has to be used, right? Or like used, because they wouldn't show us doing both of them if neither of them were going to pop up again, right? Like, I
You
feel
would
like maybe
think.
it's just reading too much into it, but it's kind of like Chekhov's gun, where you don't show someone placing a fake immunity idol unless it's going to become relevant.
I really hope it becomes relevant. Maybe Dino can do another fake idol plan to bluff that he has a second idol if him and Phil are probably on the chopping block come next week and they can use that fake idol to pretend like a real idol. Like, dang, there's so many possibilities. I really hope we see someone play it or use it as a fake idol strategy because we didn't get that payout here. I really wanted to see Seamus or Shona use this fake idol.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe that can be on our week 3 bingo card.
Yeah, so we see at Tribal Council I thought this was a sort of bad move from Pinty. She is going in so hard into Killarney, saying Killarney's so weak, she sucks at challenges. When Pinty is in on the Tevin plan, Pinty knows that both her and Killarney are going to be safe. So it's like, why would you be picking a fight with Killarney for real? Because you know you're both going back to camp. Neither of you are probably going to get voted out unless Tevin has an advantage. No one else knows that Tevin has this idol and could play it, but it just seems like Pinty is making an enemy for no reason. You sort of want Killarney to go home if you're Pinty in this situation because she literally was going into Killarney so hard and being so rude to her at Tribal Council, saying how she's so weak. So it just sort of seemed a little bit like bad strategy. Maybe Killarney was in on the plan to let Pinty say those things to her. And sure, you can say, yeah, Pinty needed to play up the fact that it was Pinty versus Killarney to go home. So you don't spook Tevin into playing his idol. But I think you can do that in a way where you don't actually piss the other person off that you are being mean to.
Yeah, I would argue that, like, for Pinty, it probably wasn't about strategy, and she just wanted to say what she was thinking. Just because I feel like that's kind of also how she and Tanya got into things last week, where, like, neither of them was willing to back down for the sake of playing nice. They just went into each other because they could, and so they did.
I was like, this is so bad. You can't be fake fighting but actually being mean to a person. If it's a fake fight, you both have to be aware that it's a fake fight. Otherwise, someone is going to be offended and maybe hold a grudge against you moving into the future, which it seems like Killarney, yeah, doesn't really like Pinty coming into this swap tribe and maybe wants to target Pinty. So just having these unnecessary targets on your back because you are fake fighting with someone but the other person doesn't know that you're fake fighting is just not very good strategy. I thought it was so funny. Felix was just laughing in the corner of the screen because it was just, just bad strategy here.
Yeah.
So we see Tevin, he gets voted out with an idol. So that really sucks. I was excited to see Tony's reaction when they next episode to see, oh, both of her Tattoo Alliance people have been voted out now back to back like this. And I thought it was interesting also, you were talking about Edgic a little bit earlier. On Reddit, a lot of people thought through Edgic that Tevin could be a potential winner pick based off of his edit last week. So I thought that was interesting that, like, oh, even though he had a lot of screen time last week, he wasn't making it to merge. He wasn't going to win the game, but then he was voted out early this week.
I will say that Survivor South Africa Edgic is a lot harder to follow, like, than Survivor US Edgic. Like, I feel like they do things a lot differently, and since Survivor South Africa has had fewer seasons and especially fewer modern seasons than Survivor US, it's kind of like you don't know the editors, I guess, tricks as much as you do for Survivor US. So
Which I feel like I prefer a little bit more. I think it's cooler when people can't be like, yeah, this person has a lot of good screen time positive. Like, that means they're probably going to win the game. Like last season, the person who won in Survivor SA, people probably didn't think that that person was going to win the game throughout the season until the very end. So for Tevin, I was thinking maybe is it too early to vote him out? Were they correct in thinking that Tevin could have been a big shield going into the swap or a merge because people get into some sticky water later on?
yeah, I guess like the shield strategy in general can be dubious. So
Guess we'll never know because I mean, voting Tevin out here technically did help Dino in episode 8 because it seems like Dino found Tevin's idol that got re-hidden after Tevin was voted out. So you could say voting out Tevin was a good thing, specifically for like Dino and the people on the bottom of that swap tribe. So if they didn't vote Tevin out, then, you know, maybe that idol wouldn't have been there. So, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the person who benefited the least from voting Tevin out was Seamus. Because Seamus's right-hand guy got voted out. He kind of comes back to camp and is like, what the hell? And it just goes downhill for Seamus from there.
Yeah, especially because he was blindsided, not a part of that vote kind of thing. So we go into episode 6. They start off with a reward challenge. You have to collect 4 wheels to create a cart, push through the cart through obstacles, and then you build a lighthouse puzzle at the end. And then if you win, you win. You get to spin this wheel in order to win a certain reward on this wheel. And you get this food item to share, and it's a bunch of food items that you could get, or there's an advantage for the next immunity challenge. So I thought this was a fun challenge. There was a lot of fighting in it, so that caused some drama, but I thought this was a cool challenge.
It was an interesting challenge for sure. And I think it was a little bit better than a lot of Survivor US's challenges, because I feel like a lot of Survivor US's challenges are kind of like structured the same way, where like you have to do a physical thing and then do a puzzle. But I feel like this was more interesting than like untying tons of knots to get puzzle pieces.
Yeah, especially with that first part where they're like 4 people have to lift one person to get the puzzle, and like everyone was fighting over what to do. We need those kind of teamwork challenges where people have the opportunity to bicker, too many cooks in the kitchen, everyone is trying to get their way. At the end, it was a hero portion, one person only on the puzzle, which I thought was interesting. Usually it's like at least 2 people on the puzzle. So it was just Meryl versus Dino, where Dino did have a little bit of a head start, and so he wins the puzzle, which then we start to see this Dante rhetoric that goes throughout the next few episodes of Dante wanting to vote Dino out. One of the reasons is because Dino is really, really good at puzzles.
Yeah, and I feel like in some ways Dino became Dante's white whale, because Dino didn't get voted out in any of these episodes, and so it kind of was a bad look for Dante that he just kept gunning and gunning, especially because Dino, I feel like, wasn't in a particularly strong position. And I feel like in general, puzzles don't have as much effect on Survivor SA as they do in Survivor US. But
especially post-merge challenges, it's less puzzle challenges, I feel like.
yeah. But Dino was the one who won the puzzle, and poor Yontao. This was like the only thing that they had going for them this entire week, because the other tribe won literally everything else. But they got to spin the wheel, and I thought it was so funny because they're like spinning this wheel, praying for some mac and cheese, and what they get is a bag of lentils. Like, it was just, I loved it just because you could feel the disappointment of them getting a bag of lentils from this huge like challenge that they just did. Like, I'm not even sure if the bag of lentils would have given back all of the calories that they expended during this challenge.
I mean, at least it wasn't a bag of rice. They didn't have lentils because the other team got the lentils at the first outpost. So at least it's a different kind of food. And then Nico is like, hey, you have a treat. You can pick 2 other people from the other team to come and join your team. They also get to spin the wheel and you can have a nice afternoon together. So Dino's team, they pick Tony and Tejan to get a spin on the wheel, and then Tony spins it and gets the mac and cheese. How nice.
Yeah. They were all hoping for the mac and cheese, and I was kind of a little bit hoping they wouldn't get it, just because I like it when bad things happen, I guess. But it was nice to see them all be so happy to get the mac and cheese, and then have Tony and Tejan go off with them to eat, have a good time. And I feel like this also kind of was a precursor to the swap, because everyone was thinking about like, oh, like, are Tony and Tejan going to like get information about the other tribe for when we swap? So
I would have liked to know more about why the pre-merge team chose these two people. Is it just because, okay, PK and Tevin were voted out? We think Tony might be on the outs because PK was just voted out of the post-merge tribe. So let's pick Tony. What, did they pick Tajan because of the outpost where they said that he was the, like, you know, quote, weakest, or the person that the other team should give the idol to? So was it just because of those reasons, or were there other reasons? Why specifically did they think these two people were on the outs? I want to know. And just because if anyone ever goes play and plays Survivor, I feel like knowing how to spot if someone is on the outs would be a good thing to know how to do.
Yeah, but I guess I kind of understand why, if there wasn't like a consensus about why they should pick those two, and it was kind of just like, well, I want to pick Tony and I want to pick Tejan, so
we see them eating all of their food. Tony is spilling the tea. Tajan thinks that Tony is spilling way too much information, and I thought it was funny. Tony is spilling all the tea here, and then Tajan's just like standing there, straight faced, not saying anything.
and then when they get back to their own camp, the tables kind of turn where Tony like isn't really willing to say anything about what happened, but then we have Tejan spill the tea about what happened, and it was just I enjoyed it. It was fun.
So we go to the immunity challenge. They have to do a maze puzzle to unbraid a rope, and then you race through sort of like an American Ninja Warrior steps where you jump from each step to the other, and then they do a word slide puzzle at the end. I thought this word slide puzzle looked so interesting. I think we should DIY it. I think it's be easy to DIY without the whole pulley system.
Yeah, that would be a fun DIY, and slide puzzles are actually pretty easy to solve once you know the strategy behind them. So, and I feel like also with the phrase they use, outwit, outplay, outlast, it's kind of like theoretically you only have to solve half the puzzle because out is the same.
Yeah, so I'd be interested in seeing what the best strategy is for this kind of puzzle. Tony and Dino are the puzzle callers. Even though, like, the post-merge team is doing some hot mess stuff, Dante is, like, constantly screaming at Tony to wench the pulley system thing up. He was like, all I could hear in my ear was Dante screaming at Tony, but the blue team does win here.
Yeah, I kind of zoned out when they were all screaming at each other because I was like, I don't have to listen to this. I just have to wait for Nico to tell me who wins. So
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just a hot mess express again. Everyone on the post merge team keeps on yelling at each other in these puzzles and these challenges when they need to be having some better teamwork here. So, post merge tribe wins, which is sending the pre merge tribe back to tribal council again. Similarly to the first tribal of this week, we see people wanting to target the men potentially. So we see people maybe wanting to target Dino. Seamus is seemingly the person that is spearheading, wanting to gather people around to vote out Dino, where Seamus thinks that he has a few votes and has the majority here, thinking he has Killarney, Shona, and Pinty voting with him, potentially Teresa. But then we see Teresa isn't really on board with this because her and Dino are buddies and they've played on their original season together.
yes, and so I kind of feel bad for Seamus because he was blindsided the first time that he played. But, basically, I'm still not entirely sure how Dante's strategy of voting out all the men worked. But then when someone else tried to do the same thing, it didn't really work. But, good on Dante, I guess. Poor Seamus not being able to get Dino out. And poor Seamus not being able to use his fake idol.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Seamus says something, I guess, interesting, odd. He says him and Dino are the men, and they're each gathering their own, like, team of women supporters behind them, which is sort of what it seems like Dante is doing on his tribe as well. Okay, voting out the other men to get the women alongside with you. So I don't know. I'm like, is that, I guess, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because we've seen it, like, okay, people are saying at least on these tribes right now, yeah, we can't vote out Dante because we're already down in men. We need the stronger guys around so we don't keep losing challenges. So in that sense, it makes sense. But also, if you're going into merge and like Dante and Shane are like the biggest guys out there because you're voting out Sheamus, you're voting out Tevin, all these other big dudes, is that not good for you? Because come individual immunities, Dante is probably the person you're like, let's vote him out. He is the strongest looking one out here now.
It could just be that people don't believe that Dante has like the social or strategic game to do well, even if he does constantly have immunity. Because it's one of those things where, like, if you just win immunity challenges, but you're not good socially or strategically, if there's the one immunity challenge that you can't do because it's like an endurance challenge or it's mostly puzzle based, then it's pretty easy to like pick you off. And if you get to the final tribal council just by winning immunity challenges, there's no guarantee that the jury will think that that's a good game. So it might be that they're willing to put all of their eggs in one basket like that by letting Dante or Shane just sweep.
I was sort of confused why Sheamus thinks that he would have the social capital here to make a big move after he was just blindsided last episode with the Tevin vote. So we saw a majority came together last week to vote out Tevin. Sheamus, Shona, Killarney, and Tevin were the 4 people out of the loop. So I thought it was, I guess, maybe an odd move. Like, hey, you were just left out of the last vote alongside Killarney and Shona. Dino was in the majority. You are trying to flip people while you're in the minority to vote Dino out, who was in the majority. It seems like you wouldn't necessarily think that a person like that would have the social capital. You would think that you would need to throw someone else under the bus who is also in the minority. So throwing Killarney or Shona under the bus, which I guess it's better to make a big move. Like Sheamus is saying, let me try to make a big move and vote Dino out, because if he just threw Shona or Killarney under the bus next week, if there wasn't a tribe swap, Sheamus would probably be going home anyway. So I can see it from both sides. Like, you might as well try to make a big move to get further in the game versus going with the easy vote of, hey, I'm on the bottom, let me flip to the majority and just pick off the other people on the bottom and hope I can make it to a swap or a merge. But also, it's like he wouldn't have the social capital. He was just left out of the vote.
Yeah. Maybe he thought that the reason they left him out of the vote was specifically because they were voting out his right-hand guy. And so maybe he thought that he wasn't on the outs entirely and they just wanted Tevin gone for some reason. And so if he was still in decent standing, I can see kind of why that would be, because it's kind of like if you're going to blindside someone's closest ally, you don't tell them. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you still don't have social capital. It might just mean that your ally was really dangerous for one reason or another. So I could see situations where you could kind of come back from that, but I feel like Sheamus didn't really read the room correctly.
And I think picking Dino was probably another bad thing. I think if he tried to target splitting up Phil and Felix, maybe that would have flown better with people, because similar, okay, we're splitting up Sheamus and Tevin, they're a power duo. Maybe people started to see, hey, Felix and Phil are talking a lot together. As Sheamus, let me throw that out to other people and try to split them up come a swap or merge. So I think picking Dino was probably also not the right move because Dino is so well insulated. But then on the other hand, you could be like, if Sheamus was able to get Dino out, if he could have pulled off this move, it would have been great because Dino is so well insulated.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it never would have worked, but it would have been cool if it did.
Yeah, similar to what we see Killarney say. She says, I need to go with the numbers. She's on the bottom. She says, let me just go with the flow, which makes sense. Like what we were saying, if you're on the bottom, you're more likely to just flip to the majority and hope for a swap or merge to come up to switch things up, which is a big problem in Survivor, I would say, because a lot of people on the bottom have that mentality. Let me just go where the numbers are so I save myself. Let me throw my other minority alliance members under the bus because we're on the bottom. We don't have enough social capital. We don't have enough allies to get the votes to vote someone out in the majority. So we never really see the outsiders, the people on the bottom, banding together a lot because they're more likely to just flip and try to get in with the majority to vote out one of their own people in the bottom.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like in general, waiting for something to make your move isn't a good idea in Survivor. It's because you need to make your own fate, so to speak.
So I was excited. Could they pull off another blindside? Blindsided Tevin, didn't play the idol. Can they blindside Seamus, not playing the fake idol and not making a scene at tribal council? And I thought it was very, very smart. They make the plan to put one vote on Killarney. So if Seamus did have an idol, if he did play something, it would be 1-1. And so it'd be one Killarney, one Dino. And then on the revote, Killarney would have been voted out. So I thought that was really, really smart. And like we saw them say, hey, we don't need 2 votes on Killarney, 1 would do. So we don't maybe ostracize Killarney. Oh, she's on the bottom, but they could definitely just pretend, hey, maybe Seamus put that vote on you, Killarney. So I thought the splitting 1-1 and everyone else on Seamus was really smart.
That was really smart. And I feel like when everyone is kind of united like that, it's much easier to do these like backup plan type things. Because I feel like we also see how splitting the vote can kind of go not as expected when we see the next tribal council.
So these people are really, really good at blindsides. I was really, really impressed. Tevin didn't get, notified. Seamus didn't get notified to try to pull a move with his fake idol compared to season 42, where we saw a bunch of people who were on the chopping block. Then they got somehow ticked off into what was going to happen, and then they play their shot in the dark. I want to know how these people are able to keep these other people out of the loop, because it seems like a lot of time people on the chopping block are able to pick up in their gut, able to pick up, oh, who's talking to who's not talking to me anymore. So for future Survivor players, I want to know how they're able to blindside people so well.
Yeah, and I feel like part of it might just be like it seems like in general, people in Survivor South Africa don't go off suspiciously into the jungle to do things. Like they'll just be right on the beach talking, which increases the chance that someone will walk in on your conversation. But I feel like it's less suspicious to like go to the beach rather to be like, so and so, do you want to go to the well together with me? Because like I feel like a lot of times in Survivor US, they make it very obvious that they're like pulling someone aside to have a strategic conversation. And maybe that's not as much the case with SA, or maybe they just don't show that in the edit as much.
So good for Seamus. He tried to pull off a big move, even if maybe it wasn't the best to try to vote Dino out and maybe should have went for someone else here, like a Phil or a Felix. So I think, at least he tried, though. I think that's all that you can ask for with Survivor players. You'd rather have someone like Seamus go out swinging, trying to make a big move, versus someone who is just going to like go with the flow, go with the numbers, and then they're voted out because they're at the bottom. So Seamus, he was trying to do something to improve his position, to get rid of someone who he thought was a big threat. So I think that's commendable.
Yeah, and I feel like I was happy for Seamus just because it seemed like after his first season, he was not in a very good place with his feelings about Survivor or his feelings about himself. But it seemed like this time, even though he was disappointed to be voted out, it wasn't like as catastrophic for him personally. And so I was happy that he got voted out in a way that still allowed him to like preserve his mental health and just his general positive feelings about himself as a person.
Definitely, I agree. From his final words that we saw, he's saying he's closed the book on Survivor. This second time has helped him get over that dark past. So hopefully it was a good experience for him and he's able to move forward.
Yes.
So we go into episode 7, and this is a tribe swap episode. So something we're not going to see in US Survivor anymore. So we have to soak this all in here. And I really liked how they did this tribe swap. It was vials with different colors in them, and then everyone reveals them at once. And it seems like for this tribe swap, it was a truly random tribe swap. You could pick any vial that you wanted. Usually for US Survivor, a lot of times, Jeff comes out and he has like two platters. Okay, men pick from one platter, women pick from the other to try to keep the gender numbers equal on each tribe or similar on each tribe. So you can't have like, oh, one tribe with 5 guys and 1 girl, and the other team would be 5 girls and 1 guy. But it seemed like this was truly random. Nico didn't have separate vials for men and women. So I like that.
Yeah, I also thought the pouring color into water was kind of fun. It's a little different than like unwrapping a buff or whatever. So it was a nice little visual, even if it seemed like it might have been a waste of water in the end. But is what it is.
I like the visual as well. You could easily see, okay, who's red, who's blue, who's the pea colored yellow. Like, it's very easy to see what was happening. So we have the red team, new red. It is Marion, Shane, Dante, Meryl, Palessa, who are all post-merge people, 5 of them, to Dino and Phil, 2 of them at first. And so looking at this, though, it was 5v2 before Shona comes in, where Marion, Shane, Dante, and Meryl are a part of that Breakfast Club alliance, and they're quite strongly aligned. That breakfast group is very, very tight, it seems like. And then it becomes 5-3 with Shona there. I was like, this is such a bad spot for Dino and Phil and Shona.
Yeah, Meryl made a comment about like wondering why the hell Shona would pick to go where the numbers weren't on her side. And like I kind of agree, because it's like, why would you purposefully join the minority?
I would hate to be in Shona's position. To get that yellow color, that's terrible. It's so much pressure. I would have loved to have just fate decide it for you. You pick yellow or blue, and that's where the survivor gods are telling you to go. To be Shona and basically sort of make, I guess, half make a 2 million rand bad decision here. It could have worked out, in episode 8 if a certain someone voted a certain different way. But if you're results oriented here, Shona picking the minority going into red where it's a 5-3 split, and then she was voted out. She was basically going there to be voted out, which I don't know. Like, it's commendable. Sure, she wants to help save Dino and Phil. She thought she was closer with Dino and Phil, so it's noble. But I think you sort of have to be selfish. You have to go to the tribe with a majority of votes, even if maybe you're less close to them. But she was also saying, yeah, I want to help Dino and Phil have more numbers so maybe we can get to merge with more pre-merge people around. But I don't know. It just felt like she was going there to be like the first person voted out.
I feel like part of it is there was a lot of factors that led to her being the first person voted out. Like, I feel like she rubbed people the wrong way with like her introduction to the camp life, and then she got injured, so people could talk about voting her out pretty openly without risk of her overhearing, and then also being down in the numbers. So I feel like it definitely could have gone very differently if she had chosen the other tribe, but that would mostly be because if she had chosen the other tribe, she wouldn't have gotten injured. So
yeah, it's such a, I guess, a ball rolling effect here. Picking this tribe led to all of these other things. Not playing the idol at tribal led to other things, or not trying to play your fake idol. So it just sort of feels bad. Like, dang, she picked this tribe to help Dino and Phil out, to do the noble thing. She wanted as many pre-jury people as she could to get to merge so that the pre-mergers would have more numbers come to merge. But it just really backfired, I guess, if you're very results oriented. Could have turned out very, very different if the plan worked at Tribal Council in episode 8, but I just feel sort of bad that, she picked this to help other people and then she ends up being the first one voted out.
yeah. And I mean, I guess she did end up helping Dino because she got voted out instead of him.
Yeah, I'm like, dang, you just gotta be sort of selfish. But it's also the same thing like we were just talking about with Seamus. Okay, Seamus trying to target Dino, maybe not the best move, but he was trying to further his game in a way that he could make it to the end of the game. I can see similar thing here. Shona was trying to further her game by trying to get more pre-mergers into the merge of this season, so it could help her to win the game, versus if she went into the majority of the new blue team and it was okay, she has the numbers because there's more pre-mergers on that new blue team. Sure, she would make it to merge probably, but at what cost? If Dino and Phil both get voted out, you're still going to be in the bottom of merge because there's going to be way more merge people come merge. So I guess you're sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah. She made the choice she made.
I know, that's terrible. I would do not get that yellow color. You want red or blue.
Yeah, because if you get swap screwed just because of which vial you happen to pick, I feel like that's a lot easier to sleep with at night rather than knowing that you picked to go onto the tribe that voted you out.
Exactly. So the new blue team, we have Pinty, Killarney, Teresa, and Felix, who are all pre-mergers, Steffi, Tony, and Tajan, who are all post-mergers. So this is a 4 versus 3 if you're just looking at the pre-merge, post-merge numbers at their face value. I think this tribe is way more wide open. A lot more different things could happen versus the new red tribe. It's 4 people in one alliance who are very, very strongly aligned together. This team, it's a lot more randomness, I think. So it will be interesting next week to see this new blue team go to tribal council, because I could easily see Pinty being the first person to go. Steffi could be on the chopping block, Killarney could be going home. There's so many more options here of who can go home, because I think people are going to flip on this team versus red. It seems like it's probably going to be Breakfast Club versus potentially Palessa, Dino, and Phil.
Yeah, which I think will be an interesting, I guess, kind of clash. I am curious to see whether or not the Breakfast Club stays strong, just because they kind of proved that they are willing to be a little wobbly and vote out one of their own members. So it seems like it would be kind of easy to crack them.
So we go further after this tribe swap, and there is a new outpost that you can go to. And so for this outpost, you get to send one person to the outpost and they get to trade items basically. So the red team, they send Dante. Smart, he's in the majority alliance, he's close with the Breakfast Club members. It makes sense to send someone who's in the majority so they can give you the information once you get back. Blue team, they're between Pinty and Tajan, and then Steffi wanted to go, but she was shot down because she went to the first outpost. And then they have to draw sticks, and then Tajan is the person that gets to go, which I feel like for blue team, they probably should have pushed to have someone in the majority of the pre-merge group go. So trying to send Pinty or someone else there. Drawing sticks is more fair, I guess. But if you're in the majority, so if you're in the pre-merge here with Felix, Killarney, Teresa, Pinty, maybe you should have pushed more to have Pinty go, so then Pinty could get that information and give it back to you as a pre-merge foursome. But now you let Tajan go, and now he's going to give the information back to the post-merge threesome on this team.
Yeah, I wasn't doing as much complicated math and trying to figure out who should go. I kind of was just like, oh, cool, they're doing another one of these fun outpost things. So you definitely thought about it way more than I did.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see if, they got an idol clue. If Tajan finds the idol, what he does with it, because say they sent Felix or Pinty and then they traded the idol with Dante, that'd be a lot better than having someone like Tajan get the idol who is maybe a flip vote here, in the minority here. It seems like people are approaching Tajan to be a swing vote, though.
Yeah, which I guess is not a horrible position to be in, so.
So we see blue team, red team, they go. Blue brings a basket and grill to give away. Red brings a fishing line to give away. Dante was telling Tajan, hey, Felix is good. Team up with Felix. Tell Felix that Dante sent you. Basically saying, Tajan, go to Felix so you don't get voted out, kind of thing. Tajan, we see in a confessional, says, maybe this is a red flag. Why is Dante continuously talking about Felix here? Maybe they're closer than they seem.
Yeah, that was interesting, I think, just because when two people played together, and Dante and Felix played together, which is why Dante was like, go talk to Felix. I feel like it's difficult to tell how close they were, because even if they weren't close on the game, they might have been close after the game, or they might have been close totally unrelated to the game. So
And I think especially with the Felix Dante relationship, yes, they were aligned in their original season, but because Felix went home pre-merge, I feel like that relationship is sort of forgotten about because whenever you think of Dante, you think of Meryl. So you're going to see, oh, Dante and Meryl, that's the relationship from their original season. You're not going to really remember Felix unless maybe you watched that season recently to remember, oh yeah, they were actually all working together, but Felix got voted out earlier.
or if you watched all the seasons and took notes on who was with who.
Yeah, and you had your like color coordinated Excel spreadsheet like some people have. So they get idol clues, and then Dante and Tajan go back to camp, and nobody believes them that they don't have some kind of advantage. We see Teresa say, yeah, you guys should have lied. You should have said you got some kind of thing like an extra vote just to placate everyone else into thinking, yeah, that's not threatening. They didn't get an idol, they only got an extra vote. And I thought that was sort of interesting, sort of smart. We usually don't see people lie about what kind of clue or advantage that they get. So I think going into the future, it'd be interesting to see, oh, someone got an idol clue, but they're just lying and saying they got an extra vote. Especially for US Survivor, extra votes are being given out like candy now. So it would be a plausible lie to say, yeah, I got an extra vote, but really you got an idol clue or a knowledge is power advantage or something super, super OP, because it could potentially get people off of your back because it makes you look less sketchy because you did disclose some kind of advantage information.
I do think it can be hard though, because if you do not tell if you don't tell your alliance that like, hey, I actually got this other thing, they might strategize assuming that you got the thing you said you got. And so like say it's a 4-4 split and your alliance thinks you have an extra vote, but you don't actually, like that could end up screwing everyone over and everyone would realize you were lying.
I think the strategy would be when you're doing the whole, show for everyone, everyone's sitting around and you're explaining what's happening. Then maybe you say you got an extra vote, but then later on you pull your core alliance members to the side and be like, hey, this is me trusting you. Let's build an extra bond showing, yeah, this alliance is legit. And then maybe disclose that you got something better than an extra vote. But then also, if you're telling people you got an idol clue, like we've always said, that's probably something you should keep private. So even if that's the case, maybe it's you don't want to tell them until needing an extra vote comes up and you're like, actually, I don't have an extra vote.
I do think that can be hard though, because like if alliances are fluid or if people are being wishy-washy, like all it takes is one person like stuff getting out. So I understand. I think it can be a good strategy to like lie about what kind of advantage you get, but you would have to be careful and think about the repercussions.
Yeah, I think that's something you think about preseason. Plan it out. Don't do it right out there because then you're probably going to mess it up and then get all of your lies mixed up.
Yes.
So we see Dante looking for the idol. He is running around at nighttime. So Chappies has put his soul into Dante. This camera segment was sort of funny because it was like the cameraman running after Dante in the night and like using the night vision. I was like, oh, this is so funny to watch. And then Dante is like literally digging in the dirt and then he finds this idol in the pitch black dark.
Yeah, I wonder how much Dante could have seen, because like us seeing the night vision, like we can see. But like how much could Dante actually see of this is my question.
I want to know that too. Did they like give him a flashlight to like look? Because in the middle of the forest, if you go out and you're like hiking and stuff at night, it's pitch black. Like you cannot see anything. It's not like, oh, going outside of your house right now where there's a lot of lights. It's you cannot see, right in front of your face.
Maybe the moonlight was very strong.
Yeah, full moon and all the werewolves were out. And so he was digging in the dirt there. So
Dante
Dante,
is a werewolf confirmed.
yeah, maybe. That's why he was running. So we see Dante find this idol in the dark, and it is not an idol for him, but it's an idol for the other tribe. And so this this idol is only good until merge, so it's only good for the next few votes probably. This was like 15 people left, so probably only 2-3 more people until merge coming up. So we see later in the next challenge, Dante and Taejin, when they're wrestling in the mud challenge, Taejin says he hasn't found it yet, and then Dante lies and says he also hasn't found it yet.
Yeah, which is interesting because it's like, are you just gonna wait until you know, until it will be an equal exchange? Like, I feel like that could be a dangerous game.
I think this like shared idol thing is very interesting. We've seen it in Australian Survivor where it was a similar kind of, oh, you found an idol, but it's for the other beach. You can maybe give it to the other person who has the clue, or maybe, Dante wants to give it to Felix because Felix is on the outs or something. Or it'd be interesting, oh, he gives it to Taejin, but then Taejin votes Felix out using this idol, and then so inadvertently, then Dante gets his buddy voted out of the game. Like that would be interesting. But in Australian Survivor, there was a similar idol where the person, two people found it. One person gave the other person the real idol, and then one person gave the other person a fake idol. So they didn't actually give the other beach the real idol. So it'd be interesting here. Does Dante give Taejin a real idol or a fake idol?
Ooh, that's spicy. That I never would have considered that, but that's spicy.
Yeah, right? I'm like, it would be it's sort of hard to pull off, because if Taejin plays the idol and he's like, F, this is not a real idol, like that would be sort of bad. But if Taejin gets voted out, there's no repercussions for Dante giving him a fake idol kind of thing. So I do wonder, maybe, if people have seen Australian Survivor, so they're thinking of that kind of strategy, or if Dante or Taejin tell other people on their tribes, hey, I have this idol, but it's a other beach idol. What can we do about it? And maybe other people think of this strategy. It would be so interesting if someone gave another person a fake idol. What if they both gave each other fake idols? I'd be like, sucks.
That would be like some Game of Thrones level shit.
Yeah, I mean, it can only be used for the other beach. So it's sort of like if Taejin doesn't like Dante, you maybe would give them a fake idol. Maybe Taejin just says, hey, I've never found it because he doesn't want to help the other people. Sort of like a beware advantage idol, like we saw in US Survivor. People didn't want to say the phrase because they didn't want to blow up their spot. They didn't want other people to know that they had the idol. Or like we saw with Mike's idol, Daniel was saying, hey, maybe we just let these idols expire because they didn't know the correct rules. And maybe we have no idols this season. So that could be another strategy where Dacian and Dante both just pretend they never found the idol because they don't want to give an idol to the other person. But using a fake idol would prevent all of that.
I do think it's interesting, like how few idols have been present this season, just because I feel like it definitely does make each idol more valuable than if there's like 5 idols and a steal a vote and all this other nonsense.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see this play out. It seems like Dante is going to give it to Taejin and not to like Felix or something because they talked during the mud wrestle. So it will be interesting. Do they bluff one another or do they give the real thing? And because this idol expires at merge, maybe they're more likely to just give the real thing because it's going to only be lasting for a couple more votes versus if it were a real idol lasting until final 6 or final 5. Seems like here it's final 6 for these real idols. Then maybe then you would give a fake idol because you don't want someone else having a real idol until the end.
Yeah. But speaking of the mud pit, we talked about how Dante and Taejin talked during that challenge. That challenge was a mess and a half. The producers, I feel like, should test ran that a little bit more, just because it was a mess, and not just because they were all covered in mud.
So we see Steffi get injured and she is out of the challenge. Hopefully she's okay. Looked like maybe she re-hurt her ACL injury that she previously talked about in the premiere episode. Being an injured coming into merge, I think, for Steffi, because Steffi is such a physical beast at challenges, maybe could make Steffi less threatening because she is such a big individual immunity threat. If she's going in with like that brace around her knee, people might think, hey, we don't need to vote Steffi out because she's injured. We can maybe beat her at individual immunity. It could be a good thing for Steffi if she makes it to the merge to maybe play up her injury more.
Yeah, that would be fun, but I feel like it also would be a fine line for her to walk. Like if she plays up the injury but then always does super well in challenges, people are going to call BS. And it's like if she happens to magically heal herself right before the one challenge she needs to win, I feel like people will not be happy with her.
I guess it's like the Tyson strategy, getting injured, fake getting injured, how he got his arm fake injured. So then people would be less threatened of him. If Steffi is doing it, like obviously getting injured here is not on purpose, but now if she uses that injury to play up more injury, I think that could be an interesting strategy.
That would be fun.
So another injury that happened on screen, we see Shona getting injured. I think this scene was so difficult to watch. Her screams were so guttural. Obviously, you could tell she was in pain. And it's just so different to watch someone in pain, legit in pain like this, versus, okay, on TV shows like hospital TV shows, you might see people screaming or crying, but that's acting. So it was just really, really hard to watch Shona screaming on the floor.
Yeah, her screaming about how she couldn't breathe, like she was in too much pain to breathe. Like, oh my God, my heart just hurt for her.
Yeah, and it's like in a TV show like this, you never want to see anyone get hurt. Like, this is not the game to have people get injured. Like, it's a game to vote people out and to win money at the end. You never want to see someone get hurt or to get removed because they're injured in the game. So I was glad that Shona did come back and she didn't have any broken ribs or broken bones or anything. I like that was just such a great moment when she came back into camp later.
Yeah, but two injuries in the same challenge when they didn't even play the whole challenge just seems like a lot to me. So that's why I think they should have play tested this challenge a little bit more.
I agree. I think maybe is it time to retire this challenge? Alyssa, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would think retire or modify it in some way because the fact that the two rounds that they played were each over an hour and then you also had two injuries, like that just seems like I get that you want challenges to be hard, but when like half the challenge is just like them sitting on each other or them both like leaning against the ball so it doesn't move, like even watching the challenge was a little bit boring and it was an extremely cut down version of it. So I can't imagine it was that fun to actually play. So
Yeah, I agree. I think amends need to be made in this challenge, or you have to retire this challenge because it's over an hour long each. Everyone is exhausted. They aren't eating enough food to do this kind of exercise. Like, something needs to change.
yeah. Yeah. So I guess we'll have to see. But everyone goes home from this challenge.
Or
Um,
I think production really messed up here though. Nico's like, "Oops, accidents happen." And I was like, "What?" Like sort of like taken aback by that. Like all of these could have been prevented. It just felt really weird to watch them just like brush it off so quickly. Like, "Oh, people got hurt. That's the name of the game." But I think production should have stepped in here.
yeah, it's weird because they had the whole thing about like, oh, no punching, no hitting, no doing all of these things, but like Piney totally like body slammed Shona and that was legal and okay. Like I feel like Piney should have been disqualified from the challenge for that because I feel like that was way outside of the realm of appropriate behavior. So
I agree. Maybe like clearer rules because it seemed like Nico said no hitting, no punching multiple times. So it's sort of like, okay, after two times, maybe you should get taken out of the challenge, that kind of thing. But then even after, slamming Shona, then Pinty was able to participate in the third round of the challenge, which I agree. I thought because of that excessive force in round two, shouldn't she have been DQ'd at least from round three? It seems sort of odd to let someone who is Nico has continuously said no punching, no excessive force, then gets to keep on playing in this challenge. I was just really surprised.
Yeah, because like even if it was an accident, it's kind of like if you do something that is like an illegal move in a sports game, even if it's on accident, it's still an illegal move. You still get put on the bench. So
Yeah, I was just surprised that they continued. I mean, I guess it makes sense. You have to declare an immunity challenge winner. This is the challenge that's set up for today. There's no like backup challenge, but maybe they need a backup challenge for things like this because it just felt so jarring to see Shona being taken off in that stretcher. And then Nico is like, accidents happen. Let's keep going. Hee hee. I was like, what the heck is happening?
yeah, yeah. Especially because we didn't know whether or not Shona would come back. Like I feel like especially when it comes to like chest trauma, rib stuff, like if you crack a rib and your rib punctures your lung, you're like dead. So I feel like he definitely was super casual about the whole thing.
Yeah, literally. People on Reddit after episode 7 were thinking maybe she broke a rib, she could have had a punctured lung, maybe she broke her pelvis or something like that. So it also just felt weird, like, to have a cliffhanger here as well. Like, okay, it is TV, but to have a cliffhanger with someone's injury like this is sort of, you're just doing it for views, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it didn't feel like a cliffhanger to me because I binge watched it all, but I guess it would if you were watching it on the normal schedule.
So I think production should have had clearer rules, remove someone if they're playing too rough and they've gotten multiple verbal warnings about excessive force and playing too rough in this challenge. And with these physical challenges, like, yes, we like physical challenges, but certain ones like this, I think you need to modify them, especially after so many injuries. We've seen an injury happen in US Survivor in this challenge, now two here, and also Killarney on Twitter said she got injured really bad in this challenge too. So potentially more injuries that weren't even shown on the show. And I think it's just so dangerous with this kind of physical challenge compared to like the ring challenge we saw in the premiere episode or in challenges where you're on like a platform and you're like wrestling with like a big bag in front. Because this, it's like you have more range of motion over your whole body. You are like physically able to like push people into the mud. You could body slam people into the mud here versus like the water physical challenges. You don't really do that. Like maybe you could like push someone's head under the water, but you aren't like picking someone up and dropping them to the ground kind of thing. And similarly with like wrestling with the big bags, you're just sort of pushing each other. You're not like jumping on each other, you know?
Yeah. It was a lot. It was a lot.
And just wrestling challenges like this are just generally dangerous because these people aren't trained in wrestling. They aren't trained in how to properly fight each other. We've said this when we've watched like the challenges, certain physical challenge like the hall brawls there. It's like, yes, they're fun to watch, but also people aren't trained in how to like, hit each other correctly to not sustain injuries. So similarly here, people don't know how to like wrestle and like drop someone not to hurt them like pro wrestlers would.
Yeah. But it would be funny if they had to like as a part of their pre-survivor like health checks or whatever, they had to watch a video on how to tackle someone properly.
Some training.
Yeah.
So that was the end of episode 7. We're going into episode 8, and then we see the end of this immunity challenge. The round 3 happens where Tony wins it for the blue team. Nico added extra balls in there. Tony pushes it over. So this blue team is the one that is winning immunity. And then we see everyone on the red team crying. And I was like, this is sort of really sad. It really sucks for the red team because they've been playing this game for probably 2 or 3 hours, and to lose after being so exhausted like that is gotta suck.
Yeah, it's like the winners and the losers in something like this put in basically just as much effort as each other, but the winners get so much more than the losers. So sucks.
Yeah, so we see Dino, he finds an idol. So that's very lucky because it's probably Dino, Phil, and Shona if she comes back on the chopping block. And I was like, okay, what are the chances here? How many idols are in this game? It's probably Tevin's idol rehidden. This is also a regular idol up until Final 6 for SA. And so then I was like, maybe voting Tevin out was a good thing because he could find this idol now. So it seems like Steffi has an idol. Marion has the diplomatic immunity, the outpost idol potentially between Dante and Taejin, and then this Dino idol. So there's a lot of things floating around.
Yeah, but I feel like because some of them have limits and stuff, it is slightly better. And then obviously an idol gets used, so maybe they won't rehide it. Maybe there's a limited number of rehides that they'll do for this idol. So
True. So Dino goes up to Phil and Dino says, "Does my crotch look big in these shorts?"
yeah, that was an opening.
I like that one better than like Seamus's boobies and
boobs without nipples are pointless.
I was like, okay, this is funny. Like, hey, does this package look big today?
Yeah. Continue on with what you were going to say.
But Dino, he's fake crying because at this point in time, Shona hasn't come back yet. So he's like, oh, Marion and Meryl, please don't vote me out. I really, really want to be here. And so Dino, I thought, is really good at making himself be perceived as weak or very meek, sort of like beta. You have the alpha and then the beta. Dino, I think, is very good at pretending to be weaker than he really is and not threatening. And so I really want to know how Dino is able to do that, because it's like everyone knows, Dino's very, very smart. He was voted out because he was very intelligent. Dante sees it, but he's able to manipulate people into not wanting to vote him out. So I want to know the tricks there.
I feel like it's just like straight up emotions, because he's like willing to cry in front of people to make them feel bad about the potential of voting him out. So
that's something we need to learn for future Survivor players. That's also something I'm very interested in, knowing how he can manipulate people like that to be perceived as weaker than you are.
I feel like in general, manipulation isn't something that you can follow a step-by-step guide. Like you have to have like social prowess, and you also just have to kind of have a talent for manipulating.
Yeah, so where did Dino learn these skills?
I don't know.
So I'm happy that they pushed Tribal Council back a day. We see Shona come back and apparently like not super injured, but probably going to have like lingering side effects for the rest of her life potentially. So I'm glad that they didn't force everyone, hey, let's go to Tribal. Shona just came back, and to force a vote. So it allows Shona to integrate herself into the tribe and strategize, because this was day one of this tribe swap. If they forced them to go straight to Tribal, then Shona wouldn't have any time to get a plan or try to switch her name from being the one being voted out.
Yeah, and like I do think the plan that emerged in the next 24 hours was interesting, even if it didn't end up going quite the way that people were maybe hoping for it to go. But it definitely wouldn't have been able to happen if it happened immediately after Shona was returned to camp. Though I do wonder how much like negotiating they had to do to make sure that was possible. Just because on a game like this, I feel like switching around even one day can have a lot of ramifications.
Yeah, I guess for their filming schedule, it's nice of them to not be so rigid in it, but that probably means for something else, it won't have like a 2 or 3 day cycle, but it might just be a 2-day cycle, like, okay, challenge and then tribal versus challenge next day tribal. So they probably would push things around to get the days to fit back into 39. But when Shona comes back, you can see Dante is like visibly sort of pissed off, because when Shona comes back, he knows that Dino's not going to be the one getting the votes, but the women want to vote Shona out. And now because she's back, then Shona can be the one to get the votes, because we see Meryl and Marion say, we don't want to vote Dino out.
Yeah. I had a thought and I totally lost it as soon as I opened my mouth.
I'm intrigued by Dante. He keeps on wanting to vote the men out, which we talked about a little bit earlier in this podcast. But he kept on pushing Dino so much this episode, even after people have said, no, let's vote out Shona. So it seems like Dante is pushing a little bit too hard. It might rub people the wrong way because they're like questioning, why is Dante so fixated on Dino? Why does Dante want to vote Dino out so badly? After we've already said, no, let's do it next time. Shona's here. We're going to vote her out. So I don't know. Yeah. Dante's just, wanting to vote all the men out and like super fixated on Dino here.
Normally, when we see someone become this fixated on another player, it does not turn out well for them. So maybe Dante's desire to get Dino out will be what leads to him going out instead.
Almost could have happened this episode too. If you come after Dino, he will get you voted out. Like Sheamus getting voted out, Dante almost got voted out here. So it'll be interesting because Dante is still in the game and Dino is also still in the game. Their clash going forward, and I don't think both of them can make merge. One of them probably has to go.
Mm-hmm.
But Shona has this fake idol before Tribal Council. She had told Dino about it, and then because of this, the people on the bottom, Dino, Shona, and Phil, are able to come up with a plan to potentially get the votes to have a blindside. And I was like, this is amazing. It's always so fun to see people on the bottom potentially able to flip someone or to have an idol or advantage to get their way into the majority. If this plan worked, it would have been 4-3, where Dino, Shona, Alyssa, and Phil would have been the majority versus 3 Breakfast Club people. I was like, dang, that would have been so fun to see, like that would be really cool. And I thought it was a really great move for Dino to get Alyssa on board, having that kind of social bond. You need her to work with you moving forward, because if the 3 on the bottom, Dino, Phil, and Shona, just blindsided everyone else and they didn't get someone to flip with them to get one person, Alyssa, on board with them, it doesn't really mean anything because it would still be 4-3, 3 Breakfast Club plus Alyssa versus the 3 pre-merge people. You'd still get voted out next time. So I thought it was really, really smart to have that foresight of, okay, if we want to make the merge, we can't just blindside everyone, but we need some kind of connection, social bond in order that we do make this move. We blindside some people, but we come out of this move with the numbers. So I thought that was really great.
Yeah, I think the one thing that kind of screwed them over was the fact that Phil ended up changing his vote last minute, because it's kind of like, if you're gonna make a big move like this, you need to have conviction. And so, like, someone getting spooked at the last minute and changing it is kind of what led to the downfall. So, yeah.
Or even another fault of the plan is allowing Alyssa to play the middle, continue to play the middle, because if Alyssa said, okay, instead of just voting Dino to help you out here, I will also vote Dante, then it didn't matter that Phil switched his vote and got spooked, because they would still have the numbers. But because they were allowing to let Alyssa play that middle, pretend like she was still in with the post-merge people, the numbers are so close here. One person messes it up, the whole plan got messed up, like we saw.
Yeah, I feel like this plan could have been so cool if it had been pulled off correctly, and to see it fail was just kind of disappointing.
I do wonder if this vote will bite Alyssa in the butt come next week, because even though Alyssa could pretend like she voted correctly because there was 3 votes on Shona, the women, the post-merge women, were supposed to vote Shona, and the 2 men, Shane and Dante, were supposed to vote Dino to have the 3-2 vote split here, sending Shona home. So technically, Alyssa could pretend like, yeah, I voted Shona, I don't know what happened here. But, Dino knows the truth. Dino knows, Alyssa knows that he had an idol and was going to play it, and they were going to allow Dante to get voted out. So if things are, Dino's back is against the wall, he could potentially throw Alyssa under the bus next week, saying, yeah, I told Alyssa I had the idol and she didn't tell you. She was okay with getting you voted out here.
Yeah, I feel like that might not end up well for Dino, though, just because, like, he already has so few allies to begin with that throwing one of them under the bus might not even guarantee that he makes the merge. So
it's an uphill battle for him
It's an
and
uphill
Phil.
battle. Yeah, no matter what way they go about it, but I feel like um, throwing Palesa under the bus probably isn't the way to get into a better position.
Yeah, it's an uphill battle for those two because this plan didn't work. So for the votes, it ended up being 3 Dino, 3 Shona, 2 Dante because Phil switched his vote from Dante to Shona. So if the plan did work, it could have been 3 Dino, 3 Dante, 2 Shona, where then Dante would have gone home. So with this 3-3-2 on 3 Shona, 3 Dino, 2 Dante, Dino technically played his idol correctly in this scenario because on a revote, then if it's 3 Dino, 3 Shona, Dino probably would have been the one voted out. Dante would be like, no, we're voting Dino out. He's up for grabs here. So maybe he could have been voted out. So, technically, I guess he played the idol correctly. But I was just, Phil, this is, it's just so cool to see blindsides work out in a way that is so awesome to see. But I guess we have to be more appreciative of when blindsides do work out because, like we saw in this episode, one person changes their vote and then the whole blindside doesn't work.
Yeah. So I guess you need to have a really tight alliance to make blindsides work.
Yeah, the post-merge group, the Breakfast Club people here are actually really lucky that Dante wasn't voted out because just a couple things changed. Maybe if Shona went to go grab her fake idol, it would have changed more votes and then Phil wouldn't have been spooked and then the plan would have worked and so many things. But I think going into next week, this week we saw 3 pre-merge people get picked off. It's not good for their numbers going into the merge. That I think merge is probably going to happen very soon. 1, 2, 3 more boots. And I don't know. I could see post-merge people steamrolling come merge.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see because maybe the idea that there are more post-merge people will make post-mergers more likely to vote out other post-mergers. And just if they're annoying or if they think that the other post-merge people have a better chance of winning the game. So
I think it's sort of similar like we saw in Winners at War, sort of the rhetoric, oh, if you have kids, you should go to the end, I guess, with single people or other people who have kids, where like the single people like Michelle was sort of thinking, oh, if I don't have a family, is that going to look negatively on me come final tribal council? Will people not want to vote for me because, I'm single, someone with a family, they need that $2 million. I think for here, where it's pre-merge and post-merge, if you're pre-merge, you'd probably want to go to end with pre-merge people. If you're post-merge, you probably want to go to end with post-merge people. Because if you have a mix there, if a pre-merger makes it to the end with post-mergers, they have a great story like, oh, my first time I sucked, I was able to reflect and change, and I was able to do really, really good this time, make it to the end, a good story for Final Tribal. On the other hand, also, if you're a post-merger and you make it to the end this second time, you can say, yeah, I was really good my first time. I did a few changes and I'm really good my second time. It's also such a good story. So I feel like if you're in the game right now, maybe you start thinking about if I'm pre-merge, I want to go to end with other pre-mergers. If I'm post-merge, I want to go to the end with other post-mergers. So you don't have that difference in like, I was pre-merge and now I've risen from the ashes. I'm back and now I'm going to win the game.
yeah, you need to start thinking of what narrative you're going to build for yourself in the final tribal council because you don't want to be someone like Ken Cole from Survivor US whose entire story was like, oh, I'm loyal, I'm loyal, I'm loyal, but then votes out his top ally right before the final tribal council. So you need to know what story you're going to sell, and you're going to need to do things that actually sell that story.
And so for this team, I'm really hoping Phil and Dino somehow get a miracle and they're able to get out of this situation that they're in. But with the numbers, they're sort of cooked at the moment, which is really sad.
Yeah. I guess we'll have to see next week. I wouldn't be surprised if next week kind of mirrored this week, where the first 2 episodes were regular challenges. The 3rd episode was the merge and there's no boot. And then the 4th episode would be the first merge boot. But I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah, that's the format that I'm thinking of also, because that would make sense numbers wise.
Yep. So let us know in the comments down below what you thought of this week in Survivor South Africa, and let us know who you think is going home next. Who do you think has the potential to win? Do you think that that muddy challenge should be retired? Let us know all that and more, and we will see you guys next week. Bye.